particularly for people that are sensitive, are already attuned to these higher energies. There's like a reaching that it does as well. So like it kind of, while it calms the body, it seems to reach the energy or the mind up to a heightened space, which allows more information to come through.
Welcome to the Multiple Truths podcast. We're your hosts, Holly
and Brittany. This is a space where we can come together healing in community, where we share our self-love journeys, insights, and wisdom.
a space with no hierarchy or judgment, fostering love, compassion, and respect, and where we honor our differences. With open minds and hearts, everyone's truth is welcome here. We are in this together. Let's dive into the episode.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Multiple Truths podcast. You are here with Brittany today, and today I am here with Christian Rasmussen. Wait, did I say that right?
That was perfect.
I said it good. You
Yeah,
guys, I
you
have
did.
been pronouncing his last name Rasmussen in my mind. And you know, when you like loop a name in your mind, and I made sure with him that I was pronouncing it right. And he's like, no, Brittany, that is not how you say my name. And I was like, oh no, I've been saying it wrong in my head. So I was like worried that I was going to pronounce his name wrong. Anyways, we're here with Christian today. Hello, Christian. Thank you so much for being here with us today. How's it going? How are things?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to chatting with you for quite some time. So yeah, doing well. Everything is good. We're having fun here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so Christian and I have been planning actually to have this conversation on our podcast for a while, but life happens, things happen. I had to put it off for a while, and then he moved, right? You made a crazy move from basically across the country, and now
Hmm.
you're settled in your new location. And there's, I guess, a few things that, I'm sure we're going to get into a conversation about. But what I really want to talk about is mushrooms, and not the normal mushrooms that I talk about, you guys. I know those listening, you've heard a lot of, the psilocybin mushrooms that I talk about. Holly and I are big advocates for plant medicine. Again, please keep in mind, plant medicine is not for everybody. That's something that I always, need to preface. It's not for everybody. But Holly and I, it's been a big part of our journey. So we definitely talk about it here a lot. And Christian reached out to me actually. When did you reach out to me? Last year, sometime closer to the beginning of last year?
Yeah, it might have been like April or May or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Something like that. Because I think it was like when I was in Peru, or I was about to head to Peru. And um, you have had a journey yourself when it comes to, yeah, you've had a journey yourself. Let's just say that you've
Yeah.
had a journey yourself. And on your journey, you came across a certain type of mushroom that's different than psilocybin mushrooms. And these mushrooms in particular have really helped shift things for you. It's helped shift you away from addiction, if I remember correctly, and
Hmm.
has helped open your eyes in different ways. And, Christian reached out to me wondering if I would be open to giving these mushrooms a try, which I have. And I still have some now currently, but currently I can't have them because I'm on a crazy diet right now because I'm getting rid of candida overgrowth in my gut and I can't have mushrooms. So I'm a little bit like, oh, I'm like a little sad. But anyways, I want to pass it over to Christian. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about the proper name of these mushrooms, what the difference is, and then we'll get a bit into your story if you're open to that as well.
Of course, yeah. So the mushroom that we deal with is Amanita muscaria, and it's the traditional toadstool mushroom. So it's peppered throughout pop culture. The Smurfs live under them. It's the Mario mushroom. It's the Alice in Wonderland mushroom. It's it's also been peppered throughout history. You have some of the earliest depictions of Adam and Eve have them covering themselves with Amanita muscaria caps instead of fig leaves. It's thought to be the famed soma, the drink of the gods in the Vedic hymns. It was likely used in Zoroastrianism. There's a lot of conjecture that the early Christians utilized Amanita muscaria. There's some conjecture and debate that the original Eucharist was actually Amanita muscaria. So it's in some sense it was very likely one of, if not the most prized plant medicine in ancient times, and it's been completely demonized for the past, I don't know, probably likely since the Crusades, honestly. And then it's been, I think a lot of people around the world think of the red mushroom with white dots and immediately think it's poisonous. and or toxic. And this is essentially a propaganda smear campaign that's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. And you think, like, if you're in a position of power and your intent is to essentially enslave humanity and to keep people from recognizing the truth of the power within themselves. And then there's this mushroom that individuals are utilizing to help them break free. The easiest and most concise way to turn people away from that is to create a campaign to label it as toxic and poisonous. So, and we can get into that, the data behind that at some point if we want. But
Mhm.
it's a completely different experience than something like psilocybin, or traditional psychedelics. It's technically not psychedelic. It's psychoactive in the sense that it alters your biochemistry and it elicits an experience, we'll say. But yeah, completely different than anything else out there. It's really in a category of its own. In low doses, it has this. It essentially allows the nervous system to relax and to reset. So it's very grounding. It
Mhm.
releases, stress, anxiety, things of that nature. It seems to give people space in between their thoughts and their reactions, which is really powerful in one's day to day life. If, you know, oftentimes if people are utilizing the mushroom and they go through an experience that might elicit frustration or anger or irritability or whatever, it seems to gently nudge people towards choosing the higher path. And then also, um, with that space, it's much easier to make a different decision, and then it seems to increase neuroplasticity to the point where once you make that decision, it's rewiring the brain, creating new neuronal networks, and allowing for that decision to be made easier in the future. On top of all that, it seems to have a pretty potent spiritual quality to it, and I'd be curious to hear kind of your experiences with it as we continue the discussion. But it seems to have this spiritual overtone, and for me personally, like, it allows me to pull different threads, right? Like go down different thought processes than I would go down normally. And then we've done polls with our pretty vast customer base at this point, and it's pretty consistent that people notice pretty profound increases in things like synchronicity or intuition or psychic downloads. I mean, my first experience with it, I had a pretty profound psychic revelation while I was talking to my sister, and I just like blurted out the name of this new lizard that she got without her telling me. So things like that tend to happen.
Mhm.
Um, but then and then it it's really really efficacious also for things like addiction, which is kind of my
Mhm.
story, which I'm happy to get into.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to get into your story in a minute. But yeah, so thank you for sharing all of that. First and foremost, yeah, I had chills as you were talking, especially at the beginning. Talking about how we're made to feel like it's a poison, we need to stay away from it, right? And as you said, when you want to control people, it's like keep them away from things that might actually be good. And it's funny because you said you talked about how it potentially was used as like the body of Christ way back when. And it's funny because
Mm.
Holly and I actually had this revelation. So Holly is the co-host of this podcast, by the way. We like if you're like, who's Holly? Her and I host our separate episodes and then we host episodes together. But anyway, so Holly and I were talking about this once, and this resonates with me. You guys take this if it resonates, leave it if it doesn't. Obviously, trust your intuition with anything that we say. And I think I've said this to you, Christian, before. I'm like, I feel like the body of Christ is like mushrooms, like of the earth, right? The body, because to me, like the body of God is the earth, like
Mm.
we are. And you know what I mean? Like the earth, like the
Of course,
physical, what he's created, and like the
of
body
course.
of Christ, of love. Because to me, Christ is pure love. It's like love frequency, like Christ consciousness. So like the
Yeah,
body of that, the physical body of that to me is like mushrooms. And I say like the blood of Christ is like ayahuasca because ayahuasca actually
I love
looks like
that.
blood. Like
Hmm.
it's thick too. Anyways, of course, take that how that resonates with you, but that's what I like to say. And it makes so much sense to me because for me, particular personally, like plant medicine has really helped me connect to that of love and to see things as universal, and has really shifted my perspective, both within myself and on the outside world. Anyways, but with the mushrooms that you've mentioned, so for those listening, it is like very different than, psilocybin mushrooms. It, whenever I consumed it, it's not like you're on a journey or anything like that. I just like go about my day, and I'm curious. I'm looking forward to trying them again, and to have more of like a bigger dose when I can, which will be in
Hmm.
May. In May, I'll be able to again. But I've been on a really clean break from any sort of substance, like any substance. I haven't had like any substance in a while. Um, So that's going to be, I'm excited to introduce specifically this form of mushroom again afterward. But when I was taking it before, because I forget the protocol I was taking. It was like every day you take it like a few times a day. And
Yeah.
I just believe like nothing super profound happened for me or anything like that. It's not like I had, oh my gosh, this experience or this happened. But for me, if anything, like I feel like it did help me just feel more grounded, like in myself.
Mhm.
And it was through a time where I was going through massive shift and transition. So I feel like if anything, it just helped me stay grounded in myself through transition, because I feel like transition can be very uncomfortable, especially when you don't know what's next, right? And I've been in a transitionary period for a long time now. I'm like, when is this transition going to be finished? Like, I'm
I
ready
hear
to come out
that.
the other side. You know what I mean? But I remember feeling like tinglings. I think I told this to you too. It's like I
Hmm.
kept feeling like tinglings on just specifically like one side of my head. Excuse me. And I didn't know what that was, but that was a sensation that I noticed on the mushrooms. Excuse me. I'm like literally choking on my own spit, you guys. Like, what is going on? Excuse me. But I kept feeling like these tinglings on the side of my head, like just throughout the day. And I didn't notice that like prior to taking the mushroom. And like, so I didn't really know like what that was. Like to me, when I feel sensations like that, it's normally like when I'm doing readings for people or when I'm in meditation and I'm, entering an altered state, or I'm feeling the presence, I'm feeling the energy of spirit or whatever. So, maybe it just had me more grounded in myself. Something you said about you were talking to your sister and you had information that came through, right? Basically, like
Hmm.
psychic information, reading like the energy. And as somebody who does this work, somebody who's stepping now into teaching this work, um, the key to becoming aware of spirit is really being connected with yourself. The more present you are, the more present you are, the more connected to yourself and your body that you are, because your body is the vessel. Your body is the vessel. So a lot of people are disconnected from their body. And as a result of being disconnected from their body, they struggle with connecting to spirit. Your body is the vessel. So when you're connected to your body and you understand your energy versus what's not your energy, and the more present you are, because that's another thing, we're often in the mind, we're distracted, we're thinking about what's next, we're thinking about this, we're thinking about that, we're thinking about what happened yesterday or what's coming tomorrow, right? The more you're out of your mind and connected to your heart and your body, the more present you are, the more open you are. Therefore, your vessel is more open to receiving that information. Does that make sense? So it wouldn't surprise me if, because we all have the ability to access this with mushrooms, without mushrooms, whatever. But if anything, like for me personally, I feel like it did help ground me, connect me more with myself. And yeah, it's not like I was like blast off or anything like that. I'm excited to try a heavier dose, a bigger dose, to see what that feels like. Cause I know you were really encouraging me to do so, but I just like didn't. I've been so busy and just things have been going on. So I'm excited to introduce that again when I come back from Costa Rica. So when I come back, that's when my diet will go back to normal. Hopefully, we'll see. And I'll be looking forward to trying it again because I still have like the big caps from you. So I'll
Yeah.
definitely keep you posted with that. But yeah, curious your take on that, like my perspective on that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that it does so beautifully is reduce noise, and like you're saying, it's the noise that keeps us disconnected from the higher energies and the higher information, and so it seems to do that really really well. It's also dose dependent, of course. So like you were taking basically the smallest amount that is recommended at any point, and then doing it multiple times a day so that it accrues, the experience accrues over time, or you stay in that state of yeah, reduced noise. So I'm really curious to see how the larger doses work for you. I'm curious to see if because it seems that there is a reduced noise aspect, but then there's also, particularly for people that are sensitive, or already attuned to these higher energies, there's like a reaching that it does as well. So like it kind of, while it calms the body, it seems to reach the energy or the mind up to a heightened space, which allows more information to come through. So I mean, there was a study. There was a guy in the 50s that there's a book written about this, and he was an ESP researcher and then went to into the army and had his old assistant hit him up one day saying somebody came in and they touched this ancient Egyptian object and went into a psychometric trance and started speaking in ancient Egyptian. And I don't know what they're saying, what's going on. And he ended up, breaking away and going back and interviewing this guy. And it's a whole multi-year process. But the guy was speaking legitimate ancient Egyptian and talking about this ancient mushroom ritual that they did. And it was with Amanita
Interesting.
Muscaria. And it's a really dry book. I actually don't recommend anybody reading it. It's very hard to get through. It's written in the 50s and it's like, yeah, very, very boring. But there's really interesting nuggets of information throughout. And what he ended up doing was he ended up also keep in mind, like, they had no idea how to dose this. They didn't have any idea how to prepare this. Like, this study done in recent days could be really cool to reinvent it and see what happens. But he ended up getting a bunch of sensitives, people that were already psychic, and doing like the card tests or whatever it may be, where like if there's a slight statistical anomaly in favor of them, then like, okay, they're sensitive, like you can measure by that method. And
Yeah.
what he found was when utilizing Amanita, their their accuracy went up like 10 times. Um, yeah,
Interesting. Do you know what? I'm like getting like excited about this again. I'm like ideas are spinning in my mind. When I'm able to like reintroduce it, I'm like I would love to maybe start even like if I did like a period of time where I take it regularly again while also incorporating like bigger doses, I would totally do like a vlog series and document every experience.
that'd
We
be
could talk
awesome.
about that. We could talk about that after because I'm sure like the audience would be interested. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
would just give my honest like findings.
yeah,
But I'll like really keep track of it and I'll document it. Woo, that makes me excited. We could talk
that
about
would be
that
really
after.
cool.
That
That
would be
sounds amazing.
fun. That would be super fun. With that said, I would love to. I'm like my head's going to two places. There's something you mentioned about data before because I feel like bringing data into things is always good. I'm
Hmm.
curious if you're interested, if you'd be willing to talk about some of the data, but also I want to hear about your story. So I don't know where you want to go first. I'm open to
Yeah,
either.
we can go into the data first. There's none. There's literally none. Unfortunately, now we have 60,000 customers and growing. I've heard tens of thousands of anecdotes about this. So there's anecdotal data that's stacked up. We've done polls, things of that nature. Unfortunately, funding research is extraordinarily expensive and it takes a lot of time. And like, I think for the majority of people in this world, maybe not the majority, for a lot of people, like if they hear that their aunt or their brother or their best friend or whatever utilized something and had this like really profound experience, that moves the needle quite a bit for them. But a lot of people
Mhm.
also need, like, really want their doctor or a professional to like give them the okay or recommend it. And then those
Yeah.
doctors or professionals, they're not gonna budge unless there's hard data. Like that's just how
Right.
it is.
Right.
Unless they're like the functional med. I'll be speaking at the largest functional medicine doctor conference in Dallas, in the country, in Dallas, in like a month, and that's a really cool step forward for what we're
Mm,
doing. And
mm,
they're more open to the anecdotes because a lot
mhm.
of what they're doing is fringe and outside of the current
Yeah.
paradigm.
Yeah.
But we have a fund that we've been growing steadily over years, but we need it over the past couple years. We need it to get to like $500,000 to really get any data. So it's
Totally.
unfortunate,
Yeah.
but that's kind of
Yeah.
how it is. And then the other unfortunate thing is, and we're working on like a 501(c)(3, a nonprofit. Once we have, because like nobody, people that have money don't just want to like give money to data unless there's a tax deduction or there's potential profit on
Right.
the end. And like with what we're
Right.
doing currently, it's like, well, the profit is you'd be doing good for the world. But most
Yeah.
people are like,
Yeah.
well, I need a tax deduction as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunate, but it's just how it
Yeah.
is. So we're in the process of working on it. I'm hoping that um, the more people we meet and the more the more people in positions to do research that we meet,
Mm-hmm.
people seem to be more interested, and the more awareness that's garnished, throughout society. So things like this is really
Mm-hmm.
important because it helps
Yeah.
garner awareness. And
Mm-hmm.
at some point, hopefully, like a university will want to actually do some studies on it also, and then it
Yeah.
wouldn't be on us, and grants could be done. But yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll be a test subject.
Yeah,
Like, I
for sure.
volunteer. I volunteer. Yeah, because I think that, yeah, just in the world we live in, right? There's so much that, as you were saying before, right? I feel like stuff that has been hidden from us, or there's things that we have so much research into, and so many things we don't have research into. And it's kind of like, I feel like, yeah, we need to be looking into these newer, and they're not even newer things. I want to say these ancient things that have been forgotten, that have been
Yeah.
buried, and I looked up as my time at my time as I said that, and it was like 2022, so like 222, just like noticing the little
Cool.
synchronicity as I said that. But yeah, I volunteer to be a test subject. Okay, so I'll just like put that out into the universe. Because I'm so into this sort of a thing. And anyways, I would love to hear about your story though, like, because I know we've talked about it before. If you're willing to share, I guess, how you came across this and how it's really changed and shaped your life, because you are so passionate about this because of the impact it had on your life. So I think that your story is potent, and I feel like, yeah, your story is important. So I'll give you the floor.
I was I was well, I won't touch too much on childhood, but I had a what I call the first dark night of the soul at 12 or 13. And I was I got to a really really bad place. I was in private school. I was the top of my class, and I didn't quite fit in with everybody, so I was picked on quite a bit. A couple of instances where I was basically humiliated in front of the whole school, and it caused this really really intense spiral of like self-hate and self-loathing. And I was cutting myself, and I didn't eat any food for like 4 or 5 months. Like I was basically, I mean, just barely. I was like 90 pounds at 5'9" or something like that, when I ended up getting committed to the psych ward. And I had a couple suicide attempts, and really 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 dark time. And in in the hospital I got introduced to drugs, and in some sense they saved my life. Like it gave me something to be excited about in life, and to help. It was a false light, right? Like it was the false light like sucking me in. And that became a lot of my life, moving forward. And I was in and out of treatment as a kid, and I had a couple years sober, from 16 to 18, and then I got into harder substances after that. And I was always really successful. I was a closeted addict. I would inject something in the bathroom and then go work on my business. It was a really like it was a really it was a really dark time, but in some sense I was also like I was just I was driven to continue to push aside all the pain that I had experienced when I was a kid, and like um, not allow it to fester up. So I pushed everything down and everything down. And it was, I was in real estate, which wasn't fulfilling at all for me, but it gave me the dopamine hit, and that's kind of what I was interested at this point in time. I was always really spiritual too. Like throughout this whole process I was meditating daily, maybe not all the time, but and I went to school for physics in college. Like I've always been really interested in what else is out there, we'll say. And at the end of my 20s, I was successful until I wasn't, and then things started falling apart in my personal life and in my business. And I really realized, like, okay, this is e- I have big aspirations and goals, and I've had them since I was a little kid. I've always felt like I was here for something much bigger. And I really realized, like, okay, if you keep down this path, like, either you're going to die, or like the very worst you're going to die, or you're not going to be able to accomplish what you came here to do. So it was time to give it all up, and I gave it all up, and I haven't looked back, which is I'm really grateful for. But so I got off of opiates, at 28, 29, and then it was time to get off benzodiazepines. And benzos, abbreviated as benzos, and benzos are your typical anti-anxiety medication, you think of Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin, Valium. Those are all benzos, and they're known in these drug communities, we'll say, as being the worst drugs on the face of the earth to get off of. Harder than opiates, harder than alcohol, harder than anything. And it is such because the withdrawal lasts for so long. For a lot of people, not for everybody. Some people can, some people are blessed. But I knew that they were supposed to be the hardest to get off of. And I was on them for like 10, 12 years at pretty high doses. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. It's essentially, I was essentially living in a panic attack times 10 or 100, 24/7 for a year, longer than a year. And with a slew of body symptoms that, like, I still have physical issues from that time period. Unfortunate, but I mean, it puts the body in shock, like, consistently. And uh and I was a year into this withdrawal, and I was seriously contemplating ending my life. Like, I was getting really close. I couldn't continue. My marriage at the time was failing. Everything was falling apart, and I was on a hike, like, really, like, in the process of contemplating this, and like, what am I going to do? Is it time? Like, I don't know if I can do this, because I'd also, it felt like I had healed maybe like 5-10% at this point. So I was looking at like 7-8 years potentially of going through this hell. And I was on this hike, and I found this patch of mushrooms growing. And there was, and there were the variety that we get in Minnesota. It's a different variety, same compounds, but they're orange with white dots. So beautiful, like fairy tale esque orange, huge orange mushrooms with white dots on them. And I had this, and I knew what they were. Um, I've studied substances my whole life. I've always been really interested in psychedelics, but I never tried them because of that narrative. Like, they're toxic, they're poisonous, or I had heard about people trying them and they had really bad experiences. And that's, now I know it's because they took way too high of a dose and or didn't prepare them properly, because you can't just eat them raw to the ground. Like, it'll make people sick. You have to dry them. Um, but there was this super strong, potent magnetism towards them. It was like a heart pull. Like, I like to relate it to, if you meet somebody and you're like, and it's going to be a future partner or a future best friend, like, there's this draw towards that individual. It was like that, but to a level that I never experienced before. And so I picked them, and I went to the house and I did some research, and I found that they actually work on the same receptors in the brain that benzodiazepines damage, and that's the GABA system and the glutamate system, your inhibitory system and your excitatory system. And there was no good information online. This is in 2020, by the way. It was also, so I was going through benzo withdrawal in the middle of like COVID and all this stuff coming out about what's going on in the world. And yeah, it was really intense time. But there was one person online that was talking positively about them, and she claimed that she utilized them to get off of benzodiazepines and that it healed her brain. And I was, destitute, so I was like, whatever, like, I'll give him a shot. And within immediately, the first, I took like a nano dose. So the dose that you were taking, I think it was probably just one capsule, which was 500 milligrams. I took about a tenth of that dose, and immediately I had this energetic, like, relief. Pharmacologically, there wasn't any good thing going on, but energetically, like, there was this big relief. And I had that little psychic download that I was telling you about earlier. And I started microdosing them, and I took some larger doses as well throughout the first like 2-3 week period. And by the end of it, it felt to me as if I was like 70-80% healed. Miraculous. Like, I was looking at years of this pain and suffering. And it wasn't just while I was utilizing the mushrooms. I stopped after that period, and it still felt like my brain had been healed. So it like seemed to rebalance my GABA and my glutamate system. Now, benzodiazepines, that it's a huge epidemic. It's not discussed much because it's not, people aren't dropping like flies like they are with the opioid epidemic. It's really hard to overdose on benzos, but it's something like 8 million people are taking benzos daily in the U.S. Like, it's a huge deal. And I had tried everything under the sun to like help me heal, and nothing worked. And then Amanita just like, it was miraculous. So I like got really dedicated to, and I at this point in time, I didn't know the scope of efficacy. I didn't know like how powerful it was, and really what benefit it had outside of anxiety, sleep, and benzo withdrawal. But I joined this little community, like budding around it, and with that woman who was talking about it online. Her name is Amanita Dreamer. If anybody's interested in looking her up, she's on YouTube. And I was asked 6 months later by her actually to start selling Amanita here in the States because I'm an entrepreneur and nobody was doing it. Everybody had to import from like Russia and stuff, which is, there's some complications with that. And yeah, so I never like strove to start the business. It would just kind of fell into my lap. And so it's been this mission that was bestowed upon me. And it's a part of, that grander mission that I have felt like I'm meant to be on since I was a kid. And it's, yeah, it's grown to be a really, really beautiful thing. And we've helped, I shouldn't say we've helped, the mushroom has helped a lot of people through our ability to help get it out to people. And we're really just getting started. But yeah, it's done so much for me above and beyond that. Like, I think for me at this point, it largely regulated my nervous system and brought me to a point where I could really function optimally in day-to-day life. That's also like, I want to be very clear too. It was with my intention also, and with the work that I've done. Like, the past
Mhm.
5 years has been work, 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 work. Like, I'm constantly working on myself, and I wouldn't have the outcome that I have had I not been putting in the work diligently the entire time. That being said, it does, for somebody that's not interested in that or not on that path, like, it does have a really powerful effect for most people, not everybody, and it's not everybody's path, as you stated before. But really, like, if we want really powerful results, regardless of what we're doing, we're gonna have to put in the work. But yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
No, no, no. I don't want to interrupt you. I want you to finish before. I thought you were like, no,
Sure.
keep going.
Well, I was just gonna say that for me now, it's largely a spiritual thing, and it connects me to my purpose, and unlike anything else, and it's kind of shown me who I am in this world, or it's allowed me to see, rather, who I am in this world and what I'm intending to do in this world, and then it connects me personally. And now I don't really use low doses anymore. I don't really need it. Every now and then I will. Sometimes before podcasts, I like to have like 4 or 5 capsules, just because I think it allows the mushroom to speak through me more. We'll say, but I tend to, if I'm going to use it, and it's maybe like once a month or once every couple months, I will use heroic doses, very high doses, and that's not for everybody. It's actually a really uncomfortable experience for most people. It's not pleasant. Um, but the insight that I personally gain from it is unlike insight from anything else. And it connects me to psilocybin, ayahuasca, they'll connect me to God, or to, the universe. Amanita connects me to God. And if somebody's listening and not seeing, like, it connects me to God internally, as opposed to, psilocybin, which tends to connect me to things externally. And that's my personal experience. But it's really, it's allowed me to get on the path that I need to be on, and then it makes the work, it makes the shadow work or the healing, it makes it a lot simpler for me, and I'm able to see very concisely, like, oh, that's what I did that, like, caused this and this, or like, I'm not acting in integrity here. It really, it allows me to see things very clearly, because that's my intention also, and like, that's an important aspect. Like, that's my intention. So it opens up the avenue for me to heal more effectively.
No, first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. Thank you for your vulnerability as well. Yeah, because it definitely sounds like, as I said before, like you've been on a journey and there's a lot there. So thank you. Yeah, just for your openness and vulnerability, first and foremost. I also love how you said, tying in intention, and, it was a miracle that this came on your path, but it's not like a miracle pill. Like, for those
Hmm.
listening, it's not like you can just take it and do absolutely nothing and have no intention and not work on yourself and just expect it to fix your life. Kind of like plant medicine, just in general. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like intention is so important. And you also have to do the work, right? It's not, nothing is a miracle pill. I feel like these are tools that God has given us, right? These natural substances that are here on earth that are here for us. But I had just had chills as you were like talking, especially when you were talking about when you had like that the first time you had like the nano dose or whatever, and you just had this like you felt this energetic release. I just had like full body chills, and just how you were talking about how it really helped to like balance your brain. I just, yeah, as you were talking about your whole story, I just kept getting these like waves of chills. And I think like like you are a testament to this, you know, it's like you are living proof again, along with the work that you've put in, devotion to self and the intention. I feel like these tools really can help shift things for people in such a big way. And, you know, talking about how many people are on these substances, benzos, right? Is that what
Yep.
they're called,
Yep.
right? Like so many people, specifically in America, but throughout the world, I'm sure as well. And we were talking about this earlier, how, you know, the earth as a collective, we're going through, I say earth as a collective is going through our shadow work. You know, you said earth is going through a dark night of the soul, like exactly that, right? Like all
Hmm.
of this stuff coming to surface within our own lives, but also in the collective, so that we can see it, recognize it, and then do better, right? So that change can actually happen. And I feel like these natural things, tools, whatever it is you want to call them, and I have chills as I'm saying this, it's important for the word to get out now, because we're going to need these things now. And I have chills as I say that.
Yep.
Not that you should ever be dependent on anything outside of us, but God source wants to help us through us. Oh, and it's making me emotional. God source wants to help us through this. Source wants to help us through the dark night of the soul that we're going through as a collective. God wants to help us as we move through our own dark nights of the soul, you know, and there are things that he has provided us that will help us through it. And this just feels like such a beautiful tool that not enough people know about. And it makes me like emotional, I'm like getting emotional as I'm like feeling into this. And I just have full body chills as I'm feeling into this. So I'm honored to, you know, help spread the word. You know, I'm honored to help put your story out there. And yeah, and I'm trusting, you know, as you're trusting that it'll become known how and when it's supposed to. It's kind of like a
Hmm.
slow rollout, you know,
Yep.
as eventually more people get on board, more people see the results, then hopefully we can do some research so that data can also be there to back it, because we live in a world where so many people are so logical. They need to, like you said, right, medical professionals need to see the data first, and they won't even look at
Hmm.
something unless it's there. It's funny. I saw, kind of off topic, but not really, like off topic, but on topic, kind of. I saw a video on it TikTok the other day, and it was about this scientist, and he was like an older gentleman, like probably in his like 70s. So, you know, normally people as they age, not everyone, but a lot of people are like stuck in their ways. You know what I mean? It's like, no, this is the way, this is what I've learned. And he's a scientist, right? And a lot of people who are scientists, like I love science. I think science is great. I think science backs up a lot of spirituality. I just think science is just a little slow. It's just behind
Sure.
in, you
Yeah.
know, the findings, right? So I'm not against science at all. I actually think it's great. It's just slow, right? There's some catching up to do. Um, but the scientist was talking about, they did some research. I forget the exact terms that he used, but they had like trial groups where they did Reiki on people, and
Mm.
they looked at like the healing of Reiki, and the scientist was astounded by the impact. He goes, and I can't say it word for word, but basically it was the scientist, this older scientist, he did not expect to see any like physical results or shifts, but like the science backed up in a huge way, like in a very, very huge way, the amount of like, I guess, healing and energetic shift that actually took place for humans with Reiki. And it's like, okay, this is, people have been doing Reiki for years, and finally some studies are actually starting to like come out. You know what I'm saying,
Right.
to like back up
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
So it just makes me think of that, right? Eventually we'll get on board, and I'm sure the findings will support, you know, what people are talking about, but it just kind of takes time to get there, especially because, like you said, like plant medicine in general has been demonized. You know, it's been
Hmm.
demonized, and we're made to feel like, oh, it's a drug, stay away from these things. You know what I mean? And to me, you know, plant medicine is that, it's plant medicine. It's not a drug. It's not meant to be misused or like abused. It's like, to me, they are sacred tools, and they're not for everybody. I was talking to a woman the other day who she had, I forget what it's called, but like a mental break in her life, or like she had to be admitted to the hospital because she lost touch with reality, like
Sure.
completely lost touch with reality, just like on her own, with no like plant medicine. And for people who have experienced that, I would say plant medicine is probably not for you. That's why, like, whenever when you go to a place that is, I want to say, in integrity and are doing things properly, there should be like an intake form. And often they'll ask you about like your history and like, what is your
Mhm.
history? What medications are you on? Have you had like a psychotic break before? And that sort of a thing, because plant medicine can push you into a psychotic break also,
Sure.
which is why like that's why I always stress it really is not for everybody. And that's
Mhm.
okay, right? Like, we're all on our own path and there's a reason for everything. But for some people, like for me, like it can also be a saving grace. It can also really help you shift your life around. So I always, whenever talking about this sort of thing, like I always tell people, trust your intuition, listen to your inner guidance system, listen to, where you're led, and trust that. Never, force yourself into trying something just because other people are doing things. Like I always say, like, what's meant for you will find you. You don't need
Mhm.
to go searching for it. Like for me, plant medicine literally kind of fell on my lap without me really seeking it out. Um, Even down to like my first ayahuasca ceremony, like I kind of like felt the call. And I remember saying to ayahuasca, like, okay, if you're calling me, if you're actually calling me, like if I'm correct about this pull and this feeling, my birthday's in October. I would love to gift myself a ceremony for my birthday in October. And I said that like December, like the year before. And almost a year later, October comes around, and I got invited to like three different ceremonies in the month of October.
Of
And I
course.
was like, I was like, okay, I hear you. Like, I hear you. And then with psilocybin as well, like, psilocybin has been gifted to me so many times, like, just so randomly, just is literally has fallen on my lap in so many ways, like in so many ways. I'm not going to get into the details of all the ways, but like for those listening, again, for me, it really found me on my path. So it's like, if it's meant for you, trust that it'll come into your vicinity in one way or another, and just trust that. And, even this conversation, maybe it's bringing something
Right.
into your vicinity for whatever reason. But yeah, so thank you again so much for sharing all of that. I think it's just, stories are so important, like stories are just so important to hear. And with this podcast in particular, I'm wanting to like bring more people on just to like share their story, because I think listening to other stories is medicine in and of itself. And just knowing like where you were, and how far you've come, like you're still here regardless of like everything that you've been through. I think that it is medicine in and of itself for, people to
Sure.
hear, people who also struggle in those sorts of ways. So, yeah, thank you again just for your vulnerability. I'm curious if there's anything else that you want to share surrounding the mushroom, or anything at all.
I'd like to touch a little bit on what you just said about. I think that for me, like I mentioned, like it fell into my lap, and right when I was introduced to the mushroom, like there was this really potent magnetism and draw towards it. I think what we find generally is that I just went. I have this new breathwork instructor and mentor who's really phenomenal, and I've only seen him a couple times, but I the first time I saw him, I mentioned what I do, and or he asked, and he was curious, and then I saw him again yesterday, and he said, "I've seen that mushroom like 20 times since I saw you." And I was like, yeah, it's calling you, and he's like, yeah, I feel really called towards it. And so it's things like that. And I think that people that are more in tune with things will notice the callings more. But
Yeah.
even for anybody, like, it'll start popping up more and more. And if one gets quiet, they'll be able to feel this, whether it's strong or minimal. There might be a draw towards it, and that's your higher self, like letting you know, like, hey, this is a viable option, or it might be worth looking into this. Yeah. So and then it's interesting too, because you mentioned like this podcast, like that might be a node point in the calling for somebody. So like we
Yeah.
and I want to also mention, oftentimes when I really reach, like if I've tried to reach that, the mushroom or the world, the universe is like, nope, like not time, like here's a little slap for doing that, like just let things come about. And I've had a really, really hard couple really hard slaps that almost destroyed everything, which is a whole nother story. But now we're starting to do, and it just kind of naturally unfolded, in which we sponsor some like really, really large podcasts now, or we find we weren't able to run ads for the longest time because Meta doesn't allow it, but like it ended up getting figured out now. And like these these are also node points for people in their calling towards it. So
Mhm.
it's interesting that it happened through me, through us not striving for it. It just kind of happened. But
Yeah.
then as this grows, there will be more node points, in the world, and more people will be able to like heed the calling. So I kind of look at it as, instead of like marketing where we're just building up node points in response to the need or the want from the collective, like to have a different option, which is fun. And then that kind of gets into the whole discussion of like sacred commerce and how to run a business that is spiritual in nature, which is a whole,
Mhm.
it's a tricky thing. And like I'm human, like it's a hard thing to navigate at
Mhm.
times, but it's a really beautiful thing. And I hope that through the work that we're doing, and other businesses that are on the spiritual path, like we can essentially reinvent business and commerce and capitalism to be beneficial for the spirit of the world, as
Mhm.
opposed to just the pockets of the investors or the board or whatever it may be.
Mhm. Yeah, no, beautiful. I love that. And I've had a few good slaps too, let me tell you. So I'm laughing not because it's funny, but
Yeah.
because I've been there and I get it. And,
Hmm.
I think that we're human and we're not perfect. And I think that it is having that awareness that is most important. As a part of my prayers, I pray, I say, I ask for help. I say, help me stay connected to the heart space. Help me continue to lead with love. Help me stay humble, and I ask for that help. And I think that that's what's most important. And it's making me emotional because we're not perfect. And even if you mean well, even if you have good intentions, that's not enough. I think it's
Hmm.
important always to remain reflective and to always be aware that we are human. So I think asking for help, spirit is on your side. God is on your side. God wants you to succeed. You know what I'm saying? So when you ask him for help, he will keep you in line. And if that means a slap here and there, that means a slap here and there. But thank
Yep.
you. Like, thank you for keeping me in line. Thank you for that help, because I think that sometimes it's easy to go off like this wrong path and to really, you know what I mean, when you're not aware of your humanness and you don't ask for that help, it can really take you down a not so good road. And especially
Yeah.
when you do have a business or whatever you're doing, because I can resonate with that, right? It's so important to stay in integrity
Yeah.
and to not get clouded by greed and all of these other things, which as humans, it's easy. So staying in integrity is so important. It's something I'm like, I preach about, or I don't know if preach is the right word, but something I really talk about, I think is so important. And none of us are perfect. And just something I think is important to be aware of, because unfortunately there are a lot of spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual people, religious people, businesses out there that are really not in integrity. And, this is in my YouTube channel, I call out a lot, a lot of that, and I'm talking about these things because it's important to talk about, and just not to place anybody on a pedestal, period, right? Because we're all human at
Hmm.
the end of the day, and nobody is perfect. And often when you're following your heart led path, it doesn't unfold as quickly as your ego wants it to, right? It's like slow and steady. It takes a lot of dedication and devotion to self, devotion to God, devotion to purpose, and it all happens in divine timing, as cheesy as that
Yeah.
is to hear. But
Yeah.
divine timing is often like slow and steady, right? It's not
Hmm.
it's not as fast as your ego wants it. So that's something that I always like to speak on as well. But it was such a pleasure to sit down and have this conversation with you. I'm wondering if there's like anything that you would like to leave the audience with today.
So people can find us at, our website is amantara.com, AMENTARA.com. There's all the information anybody would ever want about, how to get started. And I think, and then I'm on, I've done plenty of podcasts and I go around the country and speak. But I think really like it's kind of touching on the last, the last thing that I spoke to is, is quiet the self. If you're interested, like quiet the self, and just feel into if this is something that makes sense for you. It might not be, it might be, And if it is, like, you know, get in touch with us, like find us, do some research. It's a really fun rabbit hole to go down. Like there's a lot. I could speak about, the history and implications for hours and hours and hours. Like there's a lot of really fun. It helps change perspective on history as a whole, really, when one gets into it. But yeah, if anybody's interested, just like, feel into it and see if it makes sense for you. And if it does, like, reach out to us, or do more research or whatever. And then if it really benefits you, like, I encourage anybody to help us in the spreading of the message and the word, because we have potential to have a really large impact on any individual's life, or the life, or the collective as a whole. And that's due to, like, people like yourself, and anybody that utilizes it and finds benefit, helping spread the message and getting it out to other people. So I'm just super grateful for us connecting. And, like, when I was going through my second dark night of the soul, or maybe the tail end of it, it started with benzo withdrawal. I found you and your videos, and literally, like, every reading that popped up of yours was like to a T describing exactly what I was going through. And I felt like I had it was so helpful and beneficial for me in my process and my own evolution. And so I was super grateful and humbled that you responded to me when I reached out. And, like, thank you. And thank you for opening your platform for me and for helping me on my mission. And if there's ever anything that I can do to help you on your mission, like, please let me know. I'm here for you. And same for anybody listening. Like, we're here for you guys, and however we can help, like, let us know.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's funny because, well, first, one thing that I want to say, it's an honor to have, like, been the vessel, for you to find the messages that you needed. But kind of like you said before, it's like the mushroom has helped a lot of people. Like what I say with my messages and stuff, they're not my messages, they're messages from spirit. I'm simply the
Sure.
vessel, and that makes me emotional.
Mm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if it's like the energy of the full moon from yesterday. This episode is going to be going out a little bit later because we're recording early, but it's March 4th for context, and yesterday was like the full moon. So I've just been
The
feeling a lot of,
eclipse.
like, energies lately. But it's spirit, and it's an honor to have been that vessel. But yeah, it's really cool how spirit can, send messages, and it'll find the right people through whatever vessel, right? So that's something that I want to say. But also, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's an honor. I remember when you messaged me, you also, who was it that you trip whip?
Trip whip. Yep.
Yeah. I was like, because you
Yeah.
mentioned him in the message, and I was like, what a small world. Anyways, it all aligned like how it was supposed to. And I'm looking forward to doing like a little like vlog series for my YouTube with the with these mushrooms.
Yeah.
So we could like talk about that later. But for those listening, if you're kind of like curious about it, but you're kind of like, wait, I want to see, like, let Brittany kind of like experiment with it first. And I want to kind of see like what she says with it. Stay tuned for that, because that excites me. That's something I definitely would be interested in, and just kind of like sharing my experience throughout. But obviously, like, if you feel pulled to it, you don't have to wait to like watch that. I want to make that clear. If you're really interested in it, definitely check out Christian's website and everything. Everything will be linked in the description below. So Christian's channel, his website, his Instagram, and all of that stuff, you'll be able to find him through the links in the show notes below. Yeah, I think that's basically everything. Thank you again for your time and for sharing your story and for your vulnerability. I'm sure that this reached at least one person that it was meant to. So thank you. Thank you. And for those of you listening, thank you so much for spending another Wednesday with us. And we will see you next Wednesday. Bye.
As we wrap up today's episode, we want to extend our deepest gratitude for joining us on this journey. Your support does not go unnoticed. If you enjoyed this episode and find value in our conversations, please take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also allows us to reach more people who can benefit from our community of healing and support. Every review, every rating makes a difference. Thank you for being a part of the Multiple Truths podcast family. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Multiple Truths podcast. Keep speaking your truth and spreading your light. We love you, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday.